very much, Claire. Sorry about the cough at the most inappropriate time. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for attending this evening. As I said earlier, I'm Bryn Walker. I'm a corporate pension trustee at Indigo Trustees. We are providers of small self-administered schemes, or SSAS as they are colloquially known, and becoming more and more known in the property world, which is great because up until probably the last 2 or 3 years, SSAS, I'm going to call it SSAS for the sake of it rather than small self-administered schemes, which is a bit of a mouthful. Up until fairly recently, I'd say SSAS was the best kept secret in pensions. I think most people would refer to it as the Rolls-Royce of pension schemes in the UK, because it offers the opportunity of having a truly self-managed pension. So, what is a SSAS? Let's start with that. So, a SSAS in essence is an occupational pension scheme. So, it's set up by a limited company. Doesn't have, an LLP can do it, but the problem with an LLP is it's only available for employees to start with, to get the roundabout. So it's an occupational pension scheme set up by a limited company for the benefit of its senior executives and directors. You can invite other employees if you want, but in the main, it's for senior executives and directors, which is you guys, the owners of the company. So SSAS is written under occupational scheme rules, which is different to most other types of pension that you'll have come across. So workplace pensions, personal pensions, stakeholder pensions, SIPs, self-invested personal pensions, things that you may have been familiar with, or IFAs talk about, or you may have had through an employer. Occupational pensions is a different set of rules, different set of legislation. So SSAS is a truly occupational pension. That means you, as the member, are also a trustee of your own scheme. So there is responsibility on you to run the scheme. So what most people do is they appoint somebody such as ourselves to run the scheme compliantly within the rules set down by legislation, governed by HMRC and overseen by the pensions regulator. So there's an ongoing fee to run a small self-administered scheme, which covers all of the admin. Once a year, it has to be reported to HMRC, everything that's gone on within the scheme, so that HMRC have got full record to make sure that it's compliant and it's done within the rules. And we also have to provide a set of accounts just so that they can see that it's being managed correctly. So a SSAS is an occupational pension scheme that is there to provide future pension benefits upon retirement for directors of their own limited companies. Great. What can it do in the meantime? And that's probably the most important thing. As I said, you're a member trustee. It's a member-directed pension scheme, which means you yourself are in charge of the investments within that pension. So gone are the days that you have £300 a month taken out your wages, sent off to a pension, and once a year get a valuation that says it's worth £10,000, and a year after it's worth £13,000, and a year after it's worth £16,000. You think there's no investment growth going on here. What on earth are people doing? And then you get things saying, oh, it's in the managed fund or it's in the UK equity fund, most of which is meaningless to people, totally and utterly meaningless to people. So the beauty of a small self-administered scheme is you get to invest in anything that you want to invest in. That's a very broad statement, anything. There are a list of investments that HMRC don't like, and when they don't like something, they will tax you heavily for investing in it, but you still can invest in anything. Our job is to tell you what is and isn't within the taxable rules. But having a member-directed pension scheme makes people very involved with their own scheme, because it's you that's running it. You get to make the decisions. Yes, all of the administration that we don't like is done by our company, but the actual what can it do, what does it invest in, how does this help my business, are all decisions that you yourselves get to make. And the reason that small self-administered schemes first came about, which was about in 1973, so they've been around a long time, is that there's a lot of manufacturing-based companies that were quite successful, but none of the directors had a pension plan. It used to be my business is my pension. And the problem is that's all well and good unless the business goes bust in your late 50s, in which case the director who's lived a very wealthy life all of his life is now claiming state benefits for the rest of his life. And HMRC didn't know why people who were quite wealthy didn't have pensions. So there was a consultation a long time ago. And the basic premise was, as a company, we don't know what our cash flow requirements are going to be next year. So we're not going to put loads of money into something that we can't touch for the next 30 years because we might have a cash call in 12 months' time. So the concept came about that what about if the company had a pension scheme and it was allowed to borrow back up to half of what had been invested for future business purposes? Yes, you owe it back, but you can borrow off your own pension. Basically came about that overcame most business people's objections to putting corporate profit into a pension scheme. So SSAS has been around since 1973 for that purpose. What I've just explained you will colloquially here refer to as loan back. So people are quite lazy, so it's just loan back. SSAS can do loan back. SSAS can do loan back. What I've just outlined is what these people are talking about. So if you have money invested in a small, let's start at the beginning. You've all got pensions from previous employers. So what normally happens is the company sets up a small self-administered scheme. You become a member. You then ask us to ask your previous employer to transfer that money over into your self-administered scheme into its company bank account. So let's say 100,000 comes across 200,000, whatever it is that you've got. There's no max, there's no minimum requirements with ourselves. As long as you can pay the fee, you can have a small self-administered scheme. So that money then comes across into the pension scheme bank account. Let's say it's £100,000 for ease of reference. If the company needed some cash, you're allowed to borrow £50,000 back off the pension scheme, repayable over a 5-year period, which could get you over a hump. It could buy you a piece of machinery, or in the world of property, obviously it could be used as a deposit for some kind of buy-to-let HMO. And I think this is really why SSAS has taken off. Sorry about the dogs in the background. Obviously some property trainers, some property gurus, furus, whatever you called, have run out of things to sort of talk about in their training sessions, and happened across SSAS, and have now had this wonderful idea that they can tell a room full of people that you've all got access to oodles and oodles of money that you didn't know about. It's in your pension. It's really easy. You set up a SSAS, you borrow half and get back. You go off on your buy-to-let journey. That's kind of how the training thing works. That's what they're selling. It's not as simple as that, but at a basic level, it can be. So SSAS has really exploded over the last few years because the access to capital that it allows. So that's the basics behind a SSAS. There are some plenty more complicated and clever things that you can do, but it's very basic level. You'd be allowed to borrow up to half of that for any commercial purpose, which is often a deposit on something. And as we all know, as property investors, the only thing that stops us growing is a lack of capital. So if you've got free access to capital you didn't know about, why wouldn't you do it? So there we go. So that's what a SSAS is. Claire asked me to debunk a myth, a very common myth with pensions full stop, is that you can't buy residential property. So a lot of objections is, I want to buy residential property, but SSAS or SIF is only allowed to buy commercial because that's what the rule says, or that's what the man down the pub says, or even worse, and this is criminal, that's what my IFA says. And that's quite true, because IFAs are very regulated people, but having been one 20 years ago when I sold my practice, and I have the advanced financial planning certificate, which is the pensions book on that is about 300 pages long, of which half a page was devoted to SSAS. So financial advisors aren't really aware of the product, and they don't get paid by us, just because we're not an insurance company, so we don't pay them. So sadly, they tend to tell people to buy SIPs because they can get paid on those. Anyway, so you can't buy residential property; you can only buy commercial. So let me read what the law says. So the law here is basically the Finance Act 2004. So if there are any strange questions about, oh, that sounds a bit new, please remind them that the law has been there since 2004. So that's 17 years of this that clearly HMRC and UK government are perfectly happy with. So the law says, for the purposes of taxable property is residential property, and there is a tax charge on buying residential property within your pension, unless, for the purposes of the taxable property provisions, any building being used for the following purposes is not residential property. A home or other institution providing residential accommodation for children. A hall of residence for students. A home or other institution providing residential accommodation with personal care for persons in need of personal care by reason of old age, disability, past or present dependence on alcohol, past or present dependence on drugs, or past or present mental disorder, a hospital or hospice, a prison or similar establishment. No account is to be taken for the purposes of the taxable property provisions for buildings used for such purpose. So that's the law. I've just read out the law of the land. So if you're told that you can't invest your pension in residential, well, plainly that's untrue, because I've just read the law is published, it's that simple. For later on in the breakout rooms, please, if you go and talk to Simon and Christy about SL, what they do is all allowable within a pension scheme, because they are doing supported living for people with disabilities, old age. They'll give you this list more than me. But this is why supported living and small self-administered schemes work hand in hand, because you can have an entire residential portfolio that is providing supported living, which I think ticks another box of mine as well, which is supporting the community, doing good, using money for the betterment of everybody. It comes under a big box in pensions called ESG, which stands for environmental and social governance. So that's seen as a good thing, is using this vast amount of pension money that's in the UK. And when I say vast, and this is why I would say SSAS is relevant to everybody, whether you've got a pension or not, all of your investors have got one. All of them. So if they say they've run out of money for your projects, just ask them about a pension. Do you have a pension? Did you know that you could invest that in property in certain ways? When the answer is no, you'll be amazed at how much money investors have got. So I say this regularly. The figure goes up every time, because new money is invested into pensions monthly through workplace pensions. But there is currently 3.1 trillion pounds sitting in UK pension funds that are pre-retirement. So that's not even the people that have retired. This is pre-retirement money sitting in pensions, 3.1 trillion pounds. Back of an envelope calculation, 3.1 trillion pounds could buy half the housing stock in the UK. So you avoid pensions or the conversation about pensions at your own detriment. It costs you money. So hopefully I'm here to debunk, well, I've debunked that myth straight off just by reading the law. My job tonight is to answer as many questions that people have got to help you get hold of the usefulness of SSAS, either for yourself or because of investors. Because I'm more than happy to talk to people's investors about do this, do that, blah, blah, blah. So that's sort of the very basics. There is an awful lot more that can be done with SSAS that hopefully will develop during the course of these questions and answers. But it's very base level. I hope everybody's got now an understanding that yes, SSAS can invest in residential property. So it kind of means open season for property investors. And please ask me some questions, because I don't know what else to say yet. Claire, how are we doing? Questions?
I've got a question, if that's all right.
Please, I want as many questions as I can cope with till 8 o'clock.
So there's a certain process that I don't fully understand, and that's the one where if we were to buy a commercial property within our SSAS and then complete a commercial to resi refurb, how does that work? Because obviously the end product is that it ends, residential potentially could stay in, it could be in the SSAS, which obviously is against the rules. So I understand that there's some kind of jiggery pokery that you need to do somewhere in the middle, but I just don't understand it, and I'd love to understand that a little bit more.
At least two ways of solving that problem fairly quickly. So I'll come to the jiggery pokery next. So you can buy the commercial in your SSAS, obviously straight off. You can fund the commercial through your SSAS, absolutely. Fund the redevelopment, no problem. As long as you sell all of the units, sell them out of your SSAS or out of your development, before they qualify as a dwelling, and I can tell you what a dwelling is, then they've never been in your SAS. So all of that's perfectly allowable. So a house or a home or something becomes a dwelling when it has a bathroom, a kitchen, and it's connected to the mains. So electricity, probably if you're doing flats, and water. Otherwise, somebody can't live in it. So the criteria of when it becomes residential is, could somebody live in it? And until it's got all of those things, it is not a dwelling. So no problem whatsoever. Admittedly, you've got to sell it out before it becomes that. Now, if you're selling off plan, that could be quite easy because you've already got the contract, you've sold it off plan, you're just finishing it off for somebody. Or if you're selling it through estate agents or however, as long as it's sold before that time, there will never, ever, ever be an issue. If it's a little bit worrying, you'll have to sell it to your own limited company and then sell it out of your limited company before it becomes a dwelling. So it's helpful that there's always some spare money in the pot just in case, because with property things can get delayed, things can go wrong, and that can happen. But there's always an easy way to get to not break the law, and that is that those would be the simplest. Sell it before it becomes fully finalised. And Darren can probably tell you a lot more about property development and when it would become a dwelling than I can, because I'm not a property developer. I'm a pension person. The jiggery pokery that you're talking about is something very, it's something that doesn't appear in legislation. Okay, well, right, let me say that. The taxable property bit that I was reading out does continue to give other exemptions, and there are 3 other exemptions, which are REITs, which is a real estate investment trust, other types of vehicle, and trading concerns. So residential property held within a pension that's a trading concern, which could be shares in Barratt Homes, for example, because obviously that is all residential, or is held within a REIT, a real estate investment trust. We'll come on to that later in the evening as well. Or other types of vehicle, so residential property held in other types of vehicle is all exempt. So you can perfectly hold that within a pension. You just need to discover what an other type of vehicle is. Now, if you look into the Pension Schemes Tax Manual, which is HMRC's interpretation of the legislation. So if we're ever going to have a battle, we won't have a battle with government who wrote the law. We'll have a battle with HMRC, whose job it is to oversee the law. So we always look at the Pensions Tax Manual to see what they say, and their view of other types of vehicle is what they call a GDCV, which is defined as a genuinely diverse commercial vehicle. Again, they're very nice. They publish all the rules about what is a what qualifies as a GDCV, and as long as you tick the boxes to have your other type of vehicle qualifying as a GDCV, the biggest one everybody here will have heard of, by the way, is crowdfunding. So a crowdfunding platform is a GDCV, which is why your SAS money can be invested in as many crowdfunding platforms, funding as much residential as you want to, because it's a GDCV. That means it's got more than 10 owners. You don't get more than 10% of the profit. Blah, 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 boxes on what is a GDCV. So the most used one is what's called an exempt property unit trust. So you've heard of a unit trust. That's a collective investment where lots of people put money into something and they all go off and buy loads of different shares and it goes up and down. So that's a unit trust. So if you could do that with shares, very easily you could do that with property. So you can have a property unit trust, a collection of 100 people, 1,000 people, 1 million people, put the money into a fund called a unit trust. That fund goes off and buys 200 properties, and you all get a share proportionate to how many units you've got in the growth and the yield of that portfolio. That's a fairly standard investment that anybody, possibly many of you have invested in unit trusts in the past. Now, an exempt property unit trust is exactly the same thing, but basically for an individual or company. So you set up your own unit trust. So it will become diversified. It has to, that's one of its tick boxes. If you're a property investor, you can be diversified because you're building a property portfolio through this. So if you bought the commercial through a GDCV, in this case an EIP, then you'd never have to sell the units at the end. You could keep them all and rent them, because the fact that it's a GDCV, that has an exemption within legislation. So there's nothing that revenue can do or would want to do. And there are, there's quite a large SaaS provider that's got 100 EIPs on its books because they bought they bought an office of BDO Story Hayward who only wrote ebooks. So it's perfectly allowable revenue, see it every year. So that's the jiggery pokery. It's not. It's a vehicle that at law you've told revenue, you've got it. They ticked a box, it's done. Two different ways of doing it. So pick which one suits you.
Thanks very much.
It's a long answer to a short question, wasn't it? Sorry.
No,
I want to make sure it's right.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it's not an easy question. And with all of this stuff, obviously, I appreciate that, and it's why we have independent trustees, isn't it? That there's a lot of rules that we've got to get our heads round, and it's just thinking about how we can be creative with the funds and with the rules to achieve the business objectives that we're all trying to achieve.
Yeah, I must admit, I tend to say to clients or new clients, I'm a very active trustee. I'm a very talkative trustee. I have a finite limit on how many SSASs I can run because I want to be an active trustee. And something I tend to say is, do you want to run your pension to the best of your knowledge, or do you want to run the pension to the best of my knowledge? It's really that simple. You guys are the property experts, but I'm the pension expert. So if you tell me what you want to do, my role as the trustee is to tell you how to do it. What is the best and most tax efficient, and what's going to make you the most money, what's going to allow you to borrow the most money, which is the best way to do it. Because there's ways of doing any kind of development, property purchase, any strategy you want to. And this is please for everybody in the room. You can do any kind of property deal you want using pension money. The thing that I'll be telling you is whether to do it inside your SSAS, so if it qualifies with the rules, or outside of your SSAS. So if you want to do something that the revenue won't allow, you can always borrow your money back into your limited company, which can do anything it wants to from a commercial point of view. Yes, it will pay more tax, but don't let the taxpayer wag the investment dog. So the answer to most things I'm asked is yes, you can do it. We're simply deciding whether it's inside or outside, or sometimes a mixture of both, because your SSAS can joint venture with you. Like I said, it's an amazingly flexible vehicle. But going back to that, do you need to know all of this? No, but you need a trustee that does, and you need a trustee that will happily tell you. Well, I spend my life telling people because I love what we do, and I love helping entrepreneurial property people achieve what they want, and that way it all works together. So as I wouldn't tell somebody how to do a property development because I haven't really got a clue, use me for my 20 years of doing this and say, how do we do this project? What's the best way of doing this? What's the best way of doing that? And my job is just to tell you. So,
Brilliant. Thank you.
There we go. I've read a couple of questions in chat, which is brilliant. Anita, thank you very much. Is there a maximum amount a director can pay into his SSAS per year? Yes, there is. It's the same amount that you can pay into any pension, which is your earnings or £40,000, whichever is the lowest. So if you're on 80,000, you can put £40,000 of that into a pension and get tax relief on it. If you earn 20,000, you can put £20,000 into your SSAS and get tax, or any pension and get tax relief on it. I'm not saying you would. If you earn 20, you struggle to put 20, but if you've got money in a limited company, that could put money in on sort of your behalf, and you would get tax relief on it. So personal contributions, what you earn, 40,000, whichever is the least. If you haven't made a pension contribution for the past 3 years, but you've had earnings, revenue will allow you to claim tax relief on earnings from 3 years ago. You have to maximize this year first, then go back 3, then 2, then 1. So in one hit, you can actually put a maximum of £160,000 into a pension in one go and get tax relief on it. Not everybody's got that lying around. I totally accept that. But some people have. You're all business people. You've all got limited companies. I don't know how well everybody's doing. So it can be quite an extremely tax efficient way of, well, it's an immediate boost to your money. This is when somebody says, oh, pension or property, I go, well, let's start with the fact that you could do both. As I've outlined, you can do residential within SSAS. Anything supported living is direct. Anything that's not supported living, put a GDCV in place, and then you can do anything. So you don't need to make the choice between pension or property. Do both. But I know pension people are really good with, property people are really good with numbers, because it's all about, like, you know, what's the money in, what's the money back. Well, I mean, I can't think of a, excuse me, £32,000 invested in a pension becomes £40,000 this afternoon, guaranteed by UK government. I mean, that's better than any property investment ever, because it's guaranteed. I would then go and put the 40,000 into property, and you could have the best of both worlds. But yeah, you get tax relief on pension contributions, so it would be foolish to not use it to the maximum where you can. So that's you personally. Companies, it's a different set of rules, because, as I said right at the beginning, SSAS is an occupational pension scheme, so the company can fund it on behalf of a director, and the maximum a company can contribute to SSAS in any 1 year and get immediate tax relief is £500,000. That covers off most people's desires. In truth, a company can put more in. The example on HMRC's own website is a company put £11.4 million into a pension scheme over 4 years for its directors, and then the HMRC shows how that tax relief is divided up over future years of profitability. But anyway, you know, that's just me, you know, just having a little laugh with accountants. Forget that. £500,000 and get tax relief in any 1 year. So that's going to cover the majority of people that we talk with. So again, funding, massive availability, immediate tax relief, and you can buy property. So why wouldn't you? Can money saved in SSAS be used to complete PLO? Well, I'm not a property person. I have no idea what a PLO is. I mean, the answer is yes, by the way, even though I don't know what a PLO is. You can do anything. You can do anything with a SSAS.
Bryn. Purchase lease option is just a way of buying a property, basically. Just a method of either securing or holding a property. So it's effectively, you're almost doing a long-term rent to rent, but you have a right to buy the property. It's just a way of buying a property, that's all.
Okay. I still need to get my head around that, but the answer is yes, it can, because SSAS can do anything.
It's a long It's literally just funding the cost of securing that deal. You might have to pay the landlord. You have to pay some legal fees. You may have to pay a little bit of rent to the landlord every month, but it's just a way of securing a property up front and then paying for it later. That's what it is. Right.
Okay. I would probably say the safest bet to do that would be to borrow the cost back into the limited company from the SSAS and do it that way, because I mean, you can't secure a rent-to-rent deal. I mean, back again. If you do a GDCV,
it's not rent to rent. You legally own the property, so you actually
legally control the property. You don't own it. You legally control the property via contract. There are fees associated with doing that. You would have to maybe pay a deposit or not. You'd have to pay some legal fees. You might have to pay some ongoing rent to the landlord that goes towards the purchase later. They can be structured very loosely. It depends how you want to do it. But you do legally control that property with an agreed purchase price at a certain date. It's effectively how this, a very basic version of how they work.
Right. Okay.
With the rent to rent, you're just renting to a certain point. With the purchase lease option, you've agreed to buy it for a set price at a future time, and you've agreed to pay X amount towards it or for it, so on and so on. That's the difference.
Okay. It doesn't sound to me like an investment. It doesn't sound to me like an investment.
You're legally controlling the property. You're gaining rent in from it, which gains you income, but you're not actually technically own the property. The original owner stays on the title until you complete at a later date.
Okay. I will get off the fence, and I will go, the SSAS couldn't do that directly, but if you did a GDCV, that could, because it's property related, or you could borrow the money from your SSAS and do it in your limited company, because it's not an investment. It might be, but it's not an investment. It's like your SSAS can't gamble. Just because you think it's a good idea, your SSAS isn't allowed to gamble, because that's not an investment.
Yeah, I mean, if I jump in, if Anita's asked, I just read the chat and she's asking, can you use it to complete on a PLO, which obviously at that stage, at some point in the future, it is an investment, wasn't it? You know, you'd be
Oh,
buying-
right, I've misread that.
I think
Yes,
that's what she's getting at. I'm guessing.
Right.
But I think that's.
Can you use it to, yeah, so a SAS can make an investment. So if it's in, right, residential property, unless it's being used for SL purposes, would have to be bought through a GDCV, as I've said earlier. So the answer still is yes, you'd have to put a GDC in place, but then it could buy, it could buy anything. It can buy anything. So yes, it can buy anything with leverage, which is another important reason. Have this conversation periodically with clients that want to buy commercial property, which is clearly allowable through SAS or SIP. And I say, well, why don't you do a GDCV, such as an EIP? They go, well, I don't need to because commercial property is allowable. Like, yes, absolutely, a commercial property is allowable, but SAS borrowing at law is restricted to 50% of its net asset value. So a £200,000 fund in a SAS, £200,000 in a SAS bank account, you can borrow 100,000, being 50% of 200, and buy a commercial property for 300. Perfectly okay, perfectly allowable, no problem whatsoever. Alternatively, you can put GDCV in place, put the 200,000 into the GDCV, and you can now buy an £800,000 commercial property. So when you consider the rent's going to be the same, 10%, do you want 30 grand a year, or do you want 80 grand a year? People just kind of look at you and go, wow, didn't know that. You're like, well, it's just the thinking outside the box. Just because the SAS rule is 50%, GDCV is normal commercial rule. So it's 25% deposit, 75% loan to value. Just different ways of thinking about things.
Bryn,
Can SAS invest in foreign properties? Yes. Again, we're back to the residential rules. We are back to residential and what it's used for. But can you buy a foreign property? The answer would be yes, you can. Especially if it's commercial, no issue whatsoever. Or if it's not commercial, you want to buy a residential, you've got to do a GDCV, because that can buy anything anywhere in the world. I think Simon's been having that conversation actually with somebody I know.
It's actually not buying a property. So what we've done is taken an Australian pension, put it through a unity trust, and now we're buying residential property in social housing in the UK with an Australian pension. So that's what we're doing. Slightly different, but same thing, really.
Commercial conversion to SA allowed in a SAS? There's another question. Okay, very much like the first question. Dwelling, the issue you've got is dwelling. So an SA is clearly a dwelling. So it would either have to be sold out of the SAS before it becomes a dwelling, or you'd have to put a GDCV in place and do it that way. So the answer is yes, but not directly. It's indirectly, it's perfectly feasible. Hopefully I've answered that. Any other questions? Please keep fire away or keep writing them in.
Bryn.
It's very exciting, Bryn.
Yeah,
sorry.
it is.
It's very exciting.
No, carry on. In terms of the GDCV, you're saying that is likened to crowdfunding. So
well, crowdfunding is a GDCV.
Yeah. So when you're saying you either put it into a GDCV, are you saying that you create your own crowdfunding platform, or are you saying?
No, I'd just say create an EIP or a REIT, which are GDCVs, allowable GDCVs.
Allowable.
Funnily enough, I was talking to John Corrie, who some of you will know, last night about the ability that you could create your own crowdfunding platform and fund your own deals. But I did say I think revenue would see through that one very quickly. I think they would see through that one very quickly. So I would go down the safer option, which they're very familiar with, which is REITs and EIPs. This is something that revenue have seen. I mean, a REIT, you have to apply to revenue to have it signed off as a REIT. So they know that you've got one. It's ridiculous to think they know you've got one and then they're going to get really uppity about it, because you have to ask them in the first place, which to me gives you lots and lots and lots of security.
Okay, so this is just an idea in terms of the commercial side of things when you do an SA. So you're saying that you can have, for instance, if you've got 250k worth of a pension in a SAS,
yep,
that would obviously give you the buying power of up to £1 million.
Through a GDCV, yes.
Through a GDCV.
No. through GDCB £1 million.
Yes, up to £1 million.
Yes.
And therefore, if you've acquired a property that is £1 million or £500,000 for the property and then £500,000,
or 10 properties at 100 grand each. Yes.
Yeah. If a property, say that at the sort of levels of £500,000, you're probably looking at a 4 or 5 bedroom house in a nice area of Birmingham to a certain extent.
Yeah.
That property then would convert or turn over an X amount of revenue, but it could turn over an element of maybe 60K's worth of profit clean.
Yep.
That on a multiplier, this 3.5 as an element would then give you a commercial valuation of about 200 and something thousand a year.
Mm-hmm.
That would be correct. That's like you can literally draw that back out of that property and times that by 2. So you've got a property that's worth £1 million, but then timesing it by 2, you've got 3 millions in itself. So yeah, oh my God.
Not totally sure where that math went completely, but yes, if the GDC though is owned by the SAS, so
Yeah.
all of your profit, all of your rent is tax free.
Yeah.
Because a pension is tax free.
Okay.
That might not suit everybody. So what you can do is you can assign your management company, which is outside. Your management company is the thing that set up the SAS in the first place. Your management company can manage the properties in the GDCV for a management fee. So yes, you can take money out of your pension legally before you're 55. Again, for everybody's benefit. So I love transferring old people's old pensions that are supposed to be there for retirement and allowing you to use them for your business to get you from now to retirement. I just think it's really clever and I really like it because
it makes more sense though, doesn't it?
Totally allowable. Why wait until you're 60 to use this thing to live on? Because if you can live on it now and it still grows because property goes up in value over time, you've got a best of both worlds scenario, which is why I've most days got a big smile on my face because I love what I do for a living and I just love the flexibility and the ability that this Rolls Royce can offer to creative entrepreneurial people who, if I give them a tool, they'll make loads of money with it because that's what you guys do. You're a classic example. It's just brilliant. So you can have your cake and eat it as long as it's structured correctly. People spend more time planning their bloody summer holiday than they do about structuring their pension. To me, that's insane and ridiculous because this vehicle is so powerful. Money now, money between now and retirement, loads of money at retirement, help you grow your property business, have half of it grow tax free, have half of it not. I mean, no.
Paul?
Bryn, it's Paul.
Hello.
And because the way I was looking at it was, if you take almost the rich dad poor dad view, is you get a safe job, you get paid a safe wage, and you put into a nice safe pension until you're 68 for me, and then when your pension comes out, you'll get paid like a third or a half of what your salary is.
Yeah, maybe let's say. But if
I die
40 years,
and if I die in service, there'll be a life insurance policy that will pay out. So it might be 3 times your salary. So like if you're on 30K, 90K, but then your pension pot's 150, so 60 disappears. If you die in service, you retire and then you die, it's like half might go to your spouse, but then that other half disappears. Yes. And then once they go, it doesn't get passed to your kids, I don't think, normally.
No.
Whereas with a SAS, you can get access to it now, and you can pass it on to your kids. Once you die, you can pass it on to the next generation.
Yes, SSASs are. It's just a fact. They're a trust. Okay, so the only way to stop a trust is to legally have it ended. Okay, other than that, it's going to keep going forever. So I would always say, the minute your children are 18, have them join. When their children are 18, have them join. So we're now into a three intergenerational inheritance tax-free wealth trust for the family. Why wouldn't you? If you do everything right, everybody here is a property developer, property person, property entrepreneur, property something. You're all here building your wealth. with possibly a future goal in mind, or possibly not a future goal in mind. I don't know. You're building it because you can. You're doing it because it's fun. You're doing it because you enjoy it. If you keep doing this and do it sensibly and use SSAS as well, you'll get to a stage at 60 where you actually can't spend all the money that you've accumulated, which is a fantastic thing to be in. But then we get into the problems of inheritance tax. So all money within a SSAS can be passed intergenerationally straight down without inheritance tax. And then your children bring them up to do this properly. You're giving them a major start in life, and then they can leave it to their kids. And to be fair, if they keep with a decent, if this trust law applies, the grandchildren's children should join it. Why would you ever stop this vehicle? Why would you ever stop it? Is my view. The money in there is free from tax. All growth is free from tax forever, and forever and ever is 3 lifetimes. I mean, that's an incredible way of growing wealth, is not paying tax on something. It's just incredible. Protected. It's protected from bankruptcy. Divorce is a bit more difficult, okay, because divorce is a bit more difficult. So depending on the size of the SSAS, you might want to get a lawyer involved if there's anyway, a different kettle of fish, but it's protected from bankruptcy. It's protected against taxes on debt. I mean, I think it's the Rolls-Royce product. That's what I keep calling it.
It's like your own personal bank for lending to your own business, isn't it? And then you can pass that bank on to your kids and their kids and go with whatever they want to set up, or whether it's set up their own property businesses, or it's there and you can fund it.
Yes, there's a little bit on our website that says start your own bank or be your own bank. Now, I read a book a long time ago called The Infinite Banking Concept by R. Nelson Nash. It's only 80 pages long. It's a bit of a pain in the neck read. It's written in an American style. And he talks about a product which is called dividend paying life assurance, which we don't have in the UK. The closest thing we've got is the SSAS, but basically a dividend paying life assurance policy, you can borrow off and pay back interest to yourself. And he gets people to run their entire lives through this car loan, borrow it off your life insurance policy, pay yourself back 14% interest, don't pay the car loan people. Credit card, pay it off, pay yourself back 30%. Buy a house, borrow it off your life insurance, pay yourself the mortgage interest rate, and you are becoming your own bank. The whole concept is banks. Why did Jesse James rob banks? Because that's where the money is. So start your own bank. The closest thing we can find to dividend paying life assurance in the UK is a SSAS. And the advantages a SSAS has over the dividend paying life assurance policy in America is a SSAS comes with tax relief. So you or your company, tax relief on the way in, no tax, leaves to the kids, and you can borrow it back. So what's not to like? And they're not that expensive. Again, they're not that expensive. We charge £1,200 to set SSAS up, and that could last for 3 or 4 lifetimes. And we charge £100 a month to the company to run it, to do all of the HMRC compliance, all of the pension regulator compliance, to keep you, to keep you within the rules, within the law, and you get a fair usage of Bryn policy within that £100. And what I mean by that is when you're going through a property purchase, it becomes very intensive. You'll be on the phone to me for an hour a day for 2 weeks, blah blah blah. Then once you bought the property, we might not speak for 6 months. And that's great, because then I'll be speaking to other clients that are in the middle of their buying process or doing a loan back or whatever it is they're doing. So, I don't even think that's an awful lot of money to pay for a Rolls-Royce product, frankly.
You said, sorry, Bryn, you just said it's £1,200 to set up and then £100 a month thereafter.
To run it
forever. Okay, that's cool.
And is it right, Bryn, that any pension can transfer in? It's just how difficult it is.
Yeah, most pensions can transfer in. There's the unfunded government ones are challenging. So that's military and NHS. Reason 2015, government changed the law called pension freedoms. Everybody was allowed to transfer. Everybody could do whatever they wanted. You don't have to buy annuities when you retire anymore. You can have all your money out on the day you're 55, or none of it, or massively flexibility. But they gave away so much flexibility that they were terrified that half the NHS were immediately going to transfer their unfunded pensions out so that they could leave them to their kids. And the government do not have, 300 billion quid or whatever the NHS pension scheme would be worth. Was it funded? They can't afford it. So they said, oh, you can't transfer those to a scheme with flexible benefits. So, right, I'll be very careful over that. they said you can't transfer out to a scheme with flexible benefits. I write pension schemes rules for a living. It's not beyond the wit of man for me to write a pension scheme that doesn't offer flexible benefits, but that's a story for a different day.
Okay. So in a question, if somebody's already drawing from their pension,
Yes.
does that make it any more difficult?
Depends what type of pension it is. If it's a final salary pension, it's gone. That's it. They've had one chance to do, and it's lost. So that you can't transfer a final salary pension that's now in payment. If it's a workplace pension, yes, because they can take flexible benefits, they could actually now move that to a SAS and have the SAS take over the income payment and then they get control of the investment.
Okay.
Which, frankly, to me, and this is the insanity, right, of the rules about why you can put a buy-to-let portfolio into a pension, is insane to me, because there is no better vehicle to get somebody through retirement than a property, be it commercial or a residential portfolio of buy-to-let. I don't care. The whole point of property is it comes with a yield, and that yield is somewhere between 6, 7, 8, 9, 10%, depending on what property you buy, where the property is. So why do they insist that you buy stocks and shares which don't have a yield, which do this in value, and make you cash that in monthly to live on, when the perfect investment is a property? And the paranoia is they don't want you sleeping in your pension. That's the paranoia. Crazy. But until they change the rules, my job is to tell you all of the ways that the rules are in your favor, so all of the exemptions of residential property, and then send you off very gladly to Simon and Christy, who can give you phenomenal advice and partner you up with a long-term provider and do all of that. Will give everybody a very happy life. Or do a GDCV, and then, Mike, you send them off to people like yourself and Nick, who can make 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 90% on a property, and really, really blow somebody's, give somebody's pension a kickstart.
Yeah.
Scary. Your other thing with buying property is, okay, other than very occasionally like 2008, they don't go down in value. Well, I've been through 5 stock market crashes in my working life, and that's only been 30 years. So, I'm a massive advocate of pensions, of property within pensions, as long as it's legal. Tell the revenue up front. We tell them every year, full disclosure. As long as you're working with something that's exempted at law, then it's perfectly fine to do.
I think next time we have Bryn talk, let's just have Bryn on his own for the whole show. Because
you know what, I was just going to ask, would people rather not have a breakout room and carry on for another 20 minutes and then have Valeria straight on, or do people want to go and talk to other people?
I'd like to keep listening, because Bryn, you spoke about an awesome flip strategy yesterday within SAS, and I think people need to hear about that, because that was amazing. And I've heard you speak 3 times, and that one blew my mind yesterday on Clubhouse.
Don't remember, mate. I'm so
sorry. Was that the 500,000 one?
Sorry, go on.
Was that the 500,000 one, Si?
Yeah, it's where you talk basically how to do a flip through using SAS funds, and how you can take the flip profit out, but then put the profits back into the SAS fund, paying a bit of interest for the money. That one, do you remember?
I don't know. Was that loan back to the limited company and then doing a flip?
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah,
it's where you can take the profit out of the flip outside of the pension.
Yeah,
then you can.
All right, brilliant.
Yeah,
keeping people within the rules. Good one. Keeping people within the rules.
So, Claire, you've gone full Davros again, by the way.
Yeah, can't tell you.
Everyone has said they want to carry on listening to Bryn, so I'll shut up for like 20 minutes. And then we'll have...
Keeping people within the rules, it's top of our agenda. Sometimes I come across as a bit gung-ho or have some really, quite crazy ideas. This is only because I think the rules are ridiculous, and I know what people want to do, and my job is to try and find legal ways of helping people achieve what they want. A rule of SAS is you're not allowed to trade. So a SAS isn't allowed to trade. Whereas I know a very popular strategy with property people is flipping, and why wouldn't it be? So what I said here is I've started this by telling you about loan back, employer-sponsored loan back as it was invented back in the day. Now, I'm not a fan of this 50%. The reason I'm not a fan, one of the requirements is that you've got to give security upfront, first charge security on that 50% loan. So if it's a £200,000 SSAS, £100,000 lent back to your limited company, you've got to find £100,000 worth of security. Now, a lot of limited companies don't have that, which makes it awkward, or they try and fudge it, which is wrong, and revenue will see through, and you might even get a 40% tax charge on it, and so on and so forth. And I have this argument with other SaaS professionals because I think there's many easier ways of taking money out of the SaaS. If you do right, a clever strategy is using an offshore life insurance policy that's got a policy load. So you can invest into an offshore life insurance policy, which is an investment bond, leave it in the cash fund, and then you're allowed to ask them for a policy loan against that of up to 90% of the money. So there's a case law in the UK called Willoughby, which says if an insurance company holds an asset, it's clearly not yours, which means if they're lending money back to your company, then clearly you haven't lent money back to yourself. It's quite clever, but it all works from a tax point of view. So why wouldn't you do that rather than loan back? Because there's no security required whatsoever. You don't have this 5-year repayment, blah, 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 blah. So if you want to do flips, I would basically take a loan of the majority of your SaaS funds, let's say 90% of your SaaS funds, into your limited company. Once the money's in your limited company, you can use that money for any purpose you want that's for the purposes of the trade. I shouldn't say this in open forum, but you could even use it to pay wages because that is for the purposes of the trade. But we want to get this money to grow. So basically you do your flip in your limited company, you make the profit. Now you've got the profit in your limited company, you can use that to live on because you've just made a profit, which is brilliant. You paid obviously the insurance company back in this instance, so that's got its money back. It's quite happy, and that money's there again for you to use in 6 weeks' time when you come across another flip. Now you could do this several times a year because it's not the SaaS that's trading, it's the limited company that's trading. So if that is your strategy, and it's a great way of making money from your pension now at 35, 40, 45, 50, whatever age you are, so it's giving you a living whilst it's actually still making money for your pension, because you pay a little bit of it, you pay a little bit of interest for the benefit of the loan, and you can just do that as often as you want. Just as an idea for flips, because flips don't work within SaaS, you'd have to do that outside of SaaS.
Bryn, it's Paul.
Hello, Paul.
You might have to write some of this down.
Bryn. Sorry, mate. There's background noise.
Yeah, you might have to write some of this down. All right, Els. I'm trying to bath a 4-year-old at the same time.
It's being recorded. You can listen to it again and again, I think.
You're going to have to write some of this down, or do like a flow chart or pictures for people.
Yeah, I've look, and you know that you can also phone me and text me at any time, and I'm stupid enough to answer because I love the topic. And it's been recorded, which is great. Thank you, then, mate. That's really kind of you to say. But it's the questions that help. Half the time I don't actually. I mean, I know the knowledge in my head, but I just, unless I'm asked a question, I wouldn't naturally think to say something. So I'm grateful for all of the questions. It really, really helps. And Clubhouse yesterday, I mean, I was walloped after it. I was brain dead for quite a while, but I enjoyed it. And thank you for some of the kind comments that have been sent. I've got a question from Jerry, which is great. If you're still in full-time employment and paying into a pension, can you transfer the pension to a SaaS from your limited company immediately? And also, is there a minimum amount to start a SaaS? So let's start with the minimum. Now, I'm a very strange pension person because I don't like pensions people. I think they're talking a strange language, which is all deliberate because they don't want you to understand their world. They want you to think that it's professional and it's all this and it's that and it's the other, and you need qualifications to work in it, and they don't want you to manage your own pension, which is why I stand up and bang the drum and go, have a member directed pension, then it's yours. You get to manage it. You don't get told what to do by any pompous so-and-so using 4-letter acronyms that you don't understand, which tends to mark me out as the black sheep amongst pension people, because I think you should all be able to manage your own pensions with just a little bit of guidance from ourselves. So again, you'll hear IFAs or some professional pension people go, what's the point of starting a SAS because it costs so much without 100 grand at least, or 150 or 200 or 300. I think get lost, you're crushing people's dreams. So I explain it costs £1,200 to set up a SAS and £100 a month to run one. If you're prepared to pay that, you can start with nothing. I've told you what it costs. If you want to pay for that, you're perfectly. You can start with nothing. I wouldn't unless you've got a really good plan. I wouldn't, but you can. So with us, there's no minimum. I was having a discussion with a lad. I say lad, sorry, 28. That's a lad to me because I'm 50, and I'm also envious that he's 28. Sorry. 30,000. I've got 30,000 in a workplace pension. Is that enough to set up a SAS? Because everybody in this group says no, it's rubbish, and I need 100. And I went, okay, well look, it's £100 a month to run a SAS. So what's your plan with 30? Because if there's some kind of value, if there's some, what are you going to do with this that might make it worthwhile? Because 30 doesn't sound a lot. I'm not trying to be rude, but and he went, oh, I'm just going to go and buy a load of lock-up garages and knock them out at 45 quid a week. I went, you can be a client of mine every day of the week. That's ingenious. You're 28 years old and you've had that idea. You're already thinking commercially. You're already working out how your pension can fund your growth, your lifestyle. It can get you started on a proper journey. You're 28 years old. You can be a client of mine all day long. So that's probably the smallest that we've ever taken on. But you can start a SAS with nothing if you've got a plan. The company can drop in £500,000 or up to. You can put in 40. If you want to start a SAS before that happens, perfectly fine. No issues whatsoever. I've been honest and I've been upfront and I've told people what it costs, so there's nothing hidden. If you want one and you want to pay the fee and you're okay with that, you can have one for nothing, and as long as there's a plan to do something with it. Otherwise, it's pointless having a Rolls Royce on the drive and not using it. So hopefully that answers. Oh, and sorry, that transfer in a workplace pension, right? Pension schemes are governed by rules, their own rules. If you take out a SAS with us, we will send you a trust deed and we will draft rules for you. But some of them are all obviously the same, but some of them can be specific to what you want to achieve. So all schemes are governed by their rules. Some companies' rules will say you can do a partial transfer while staying a member of the scheme. Other rules will say you'd have to leave to do a transfer, and then you'd have to rejoin if it's a workplace pension the next time the trustees have a meeting. A potential client asked me this the other day. So I just phoned pension schemes up. I phoned up the Football League pension, the football players pension scheme, which is run by a company called Broadstone. I said, I have somebody who's a member of your scheme. They want to do a small self-administered scheme to get into property. Could he do a partial transfer? Could he transfer all of it? Does he have to? And they said, oh no, you can have all of it and stay as a member. I was like, banging. That's brilliant. That's a really up-to-date rule. He can transfer all of it out while staying as a member. Fantastic. But that's a rule that's specific to that scheme. Other schemes will have that rule, but others will have a slightly different rule. So we'd have to ask your trustees. So if you're not comfortable asking your trustees, phone me, drop me an email, tell me who your scheme trustees are, and I'll phone them up and ask them the question. Morgan Stanley, for example, told a client, no, you have to leave our workplace pension and then rejoin at the next trustee meeting. If you want to transfer, we're not going to transfer you as an active member. So that's what he's gone and done. He's left. He's going to miss 3 months of workplace pension payments, but he gets what he wants, and then he gets to rejoin. So every scheme will have its own rule, and I'm happy to find that out for you, or for you guys can. So hopefully, Jerry, that's answered both of your questions. If not, just chuck another question in.
Bryn, it's Paul. Am I right in the setup costs you can charge to the SAS, assuming you can on a credit card and then recharge them back afterwards?
Yes, you can. I mean, we as a starter for 10, we will charge the sponsoring employer, because way back when I started, it's an occupational pension. That means the company's taking it out. That means it's tax deductible. So our costs are tax deductible, both for setting up and running the scheme. So our natural first port of call would be save you tax. So bill the entity that can claim a tax deduction for this. But you can, if you want, the SAS can pay for itself. Or the SAS can pay for itself. Or if you put it on a credit card, you can take the money out and we'll bill the SAS at a later date. We're as flexible as we can be. You know, I mean, we're not some massive faceless organisation. Indigo's got 7 people in it, so we're probably not running a different business to many of you guys. So it means like we're flexible. We understand where you're coming from. You're not dealing with Standard Life, who have a rule book and don't care about you. You know, you're dealing with a bunch of people that are very much like yourselves. So yeah, we'll try to do as anything we can to help.
Have you covered the if you've got a final salary pension?
I haven't. I don't know. Final salary. I covered government unfunded in a manner of speaking, and said they might be transferable into certain situations in the future. Watch this space. Final salary pensions, otherwise known as defined benefit pensions, are pensions run by massive companies like BT, British Airways, the Teachers Scheme, Civil Service. You can transfer these if you've left service. Very difficult to transfer them if you're still in service. Nobody's going to tell you that that's a good idea because the employer is paying massive amounts in monthly to your pension. If you've left, as obviously lots of people do leave and go on to get different, better jobs and go into commerce, start your own business. Final salary schemes are transferable into a SAS, and they're normally they've normally got quite a lot of money in them. But you need a specially qualified independent financial advisor to advise on any final salary transfer that's worth more than £30,000. Nothing to do with me. That's just what the law says. You have to take independent financial advice from a qualified advisor. There's only about 600 of them firms still offering this advice in the UK, because the FCA, in the FCA's view, they prefer to ban transfers out of final salary schemes, because the FCA aren't property people. They just don't think you can ever better a final salary scheme. Whereas I suppose most people in this room think I could knock the returns of a final salary scheme into a cocked hat just by giving it to Simon and Christie on a 10-year lease at 10% you've guaranteed, or whatever it is, by a council. You smash the returns that you get out of a final salary scheme, in my opinion. But I'm not the FCA, so it's expensive. It's possible, but it is expensive. But then the benefits like massively outweigh the costs, because a final salary scheme will die with you or your wife, whichever one dies second, then it's done. And final salary schemes are generally valuable. If you've worked at British Airways for 20 years, you'll have a pension scheme worth at least £350,000. Now, most people given a choice would have that left to their children rather than die with them and their wife. So even if it costs 10 grand to transfer it, it's a lot of money, but you know what I mean? The benefit of having £350,000 that's investable in property. Let's just do some simple maths, and I'm gonna screw up the maths now. I'm gonna say let's drop £350,000 into a GDCB. So you multiply that by 4, so that's 1.2. That's 1.4 million pound of firepower you've now got. Well, if you spend 1.4 million pound on property at 3% with a loan from Wayne, and you're getting a 10% yield, you pay the mortgage off in 9 or 10 years. You've now got 1.4 million pound net. I mean, you're a millionaire from not doing very much. I mean, it just blows me away what you can achieve. It's the property aspect. I mean, yeah, I'm doing some clever stuff. It's the property aspect that's the clever stuff of this. That's why I like working with you guys, because you've got really mad ideas about how to grow your money. All I do is, like, I'm the gatekeeper to saying, yeah, well, if all you need is money, here's a load of money. Off you go and do your stuff. I've told you about the person that bought a toilet, didn't I? Have all of you heard that story? The person that bought a toilet, a £15,000 toilet in the centre of a town, and even I went, well, flipping heck, you're buying a closed, shut toilet for? He turned it into a coffee cafe and flogged it on a 25-year lease to Greg's, and he's got a 50% return on capital. Bosh, geniuses, first year geniuses. It astonishes you. I look at his work every day. What people do is just fantastic. And Mikey, I keep saying you're an inspiration to me. 0 to 13 properties in lockdown. I can't believe it. It's just amazing. So
with no money.
With no money. Just think what you could do now. You buy half of Birmingham.
Yeah, well, I've been speaking to a couple of people that have final salaries and things like that. But yeah, they're still not quite sure because I think they're not quite property anyway mindset, and it's just the indoctrination of my money's safe in a pension, and it's creating an income. And I think this person made £5,000 last year off their pension pot, which is considerably large, but that's £5,000. It's and I said I think it was like 3.25% or something like that. I'm
not going to criticise anybody for thinking final salary is great and keeping it. Of course, I'm not, because not everybody's entrepreneurial and risk taking. Absolutely, but for those that are, which is I think where Paul comes from, because I think Paul's got a final salary pension scheme. Sorry, Paul, if I shouldn't have said that, but I think some of the questions you've got to have the mindset.
Yeah,
I never talk anybody into doing something that they're not. You know what I mean? People knock my door and go, can I have, I haven't got much money, but can I have one? And I'm like, yes. I don't knock on somebody's door and go, you should have a SAS. It's just not how our world needs to work. But when they are encouraging, I think we should be the conduit to find a way of allowing somebody to express their entrepreneurialism with their own money. This is where it comes back to me. Even a final salary pension, that is their money. I won't be told what you can and can't do with your own money. That's just wrong. It's their money. They've saved a lifetime for it. They should be allowed to do what they want with. But a brilliant question here. Can I use my crypto gains in a SAS as well? How will that work? Right, now that's a fantastic question. And this will show you how up to date some SAS providers are and some SAS providers aren't. So some SAS providers think crypto is a load of hassle, and therefore the answer is no, because it's not a real investment. That just means they don't want the hassle of dealing with it. So their stock answer is it's not a real investment. Our view is that yes, crypto, like foreign exchange, it is a currency, therefore it is allowable within your SAS. But please remember this, a SAS is not allowed to trade. So you can have a wallet, and if your strategy is buy and hold, we're perfectly okay with crypto up to a point. And that point we'd have to have a discussion about, because I think 5% in crypto maybe, push 10, but I'm not convinced totally myself. So I wouldn't want somebody to be gung-ho about it, apart from one client I've got who works for Morgan Stanley trading crypto, and that's his entire job. So he wants to buy ETFs in crypto with his SAS. Fine, because this is what you do for a living, and you're paid hundreds of thousands of pounds a year to be a crypto expert. You're more an expert than me. You want to invest in your own expertise, like your property people. Absolutely fine with that. Invest in your own expertise. But other than that, it's diversification, but not massive amounts, and you can't trade crypto. Now, I think the question was, could I use my crypto gains? Now that's a tricky one, because it's a capital gain, so you don't get tax relief on putting that money into a SAS. If you've cashed them in and the gain is already there, then you're going to be paying the tax anyway. If you haven't cashed the crypto in yet, there is a weird strategy. It's weird, and it works for property entrepreneurs as well, who have got portfolios that are pregnant with capital gains, which is called Incorporation Relief. Now, the UK government really want most of you to work as a limited company, most of us to work as a limited company, because they're registered and they file accounts every year, whereas self-employed people can take cash and hide and blah, 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 blah. So in order to encourage people to turn into limited companies, they enacted some legislation, TGA 98, I think it is. I'd have to look it up. I think it's 98. That gives this thing called Incorporation Relief. And that says if you incorporate from a partnership, then all of the capital gains within the partnership get an uplift, and the uplifted value is the date that they're valued at the date you incorporate. So if you have a portfolio of houses and they're pregnant with capital gain and you incorporate, then the limited company acquires them all at today's value, not 15 years ago when you bought them, which is an amazing gift from the government. And crypto works the same as long as it's a trade. If you haven't made the gains yet and they're substantial, there's something there for us to talk about. Whether the gain or whether to put that into a SSAS or not is debatable because of the no tax. But there's a different type of pension scheme that's not a UK-based pension scheme. It's called a QNUPS, which stands for Qualifying Non-UK Pension Scheme. And I've had the tax advisor use, it's not me, I'm not a QNUPS trustee, okay? But I've had a tax advisor who took somebody's £600,000 crypto gains and incorporated it and put it into a QNUPS and didn't pay any tax, which I thought was quite clever. I'll be honest, I thought that was quite clever. I thought that was really quite clever. Anyway, so I'm glad I'm available. You can get me through here. I don't hide my email, my mobile phone. Everybody has got it, or Claire will put it back up on the screen. I don't know your particular situation, but I've seen some really crazy gains on crypto, so happy to have a chat. Blimey.
Got one, I don't know, can you hear me? Because everyone keeps saying they can't hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one final one here. Sue and Pete have asked if you can set up a SSAS at 70.
70, yes. Yes, you can.
Yep.
You set up SSAS at any age. But I mean, yes, you're still going strong, and you're still going strong. Of course you can.
Go on, Darren, ask your question before I get Valeria on. You just put one in the thingy.
Yeah, all I was going to say was, Bryn, if somebody wants to pool their pensions with a spouse to put into a SSAS,
yes,
do both need to be directors or shareholders or just on payroll of the sponsoring company? How's that
weirdly
work?
no, right? Weirdly no. So Finance Act 2004, which is called A Day, just colloquially within the pensions world, changed loads and loads of rules. So you need a limited company to set up a SSAS. Right, you need a limited company to set up a SSAS because it's an occupational scheme. Bizarrely, once the SSAS is set up, it's its own legal entity, so you could actually bin the limited company if you wanted to. And I've got a client that weirdly wants to do this because, anyway, her own reasons. I don't think property people will, because the property company, I think the limited company is the property company, so that you'll always have that, which is great. But no, once you've set up a SSAS, you can actually invite anybody you want to become a member. Right, anybody you want. If British Airways sent me an invite to join their pension scheme, I could. Simple as that. Now, the British Airways pension scheme rules say you have to be an employee to be invited, but the A-Day rules, the law of the land, no. You can invite anybody you want to be a member of your pension. They don't even have to be an employee. They have to have nothing to do with your company. They don't even have to be a blood relative or related to you in any way, shape, or form. Now, I wouldn't, because you will fall out because money's involved, but your wife, yeah, absolutely. You can, legally, you can invite anybody you want to become a member of your pension scheme. Not sensible. Okay. If you're in business with your mate, which a lot of us are, 50-50, my advice from a monetary and common sense point of view is, whilst it's cheaper to have one SSAS, set up one each, because you run a company together and money's involved, and at some stage between now and retirement in 20 years' time, you will fall out. You'll have a massive fallout, and if you're both trustees of the same pension, you can cause massive problems for each other. I think I've said this online or in a forum. I have this situation going on at this very moment in time where the directors have fallen out, the company's gone bust, they hate each other, one wants to retire and the other one won't sign the docs to let him. There's nothing I can do, it's deadlock. So for the sake of 1,200 quid, I say have one each. You don't have to, but as a common sense, you're a business coach, so a lot of what comes out of your mouth will be common sense. They might not follow it, but yeah, husband and wife, absolutely, you can invite her and the children as soon as they're 18. Yep. Children, stepchildren, whatever. I always look at a SSAS as a family-based SSAS. To me, it's a store of family wealth, intergenerational wealth. So yeah, self, wife, kids. As soon as they're 18, they have to be trustees. So they have to be 18 because you can't legally be a trustee until you're 18. But yeah.
Brilliant. All right, thanks, mate.
Our pleasure. Oh God, I've gone on and on forever, haven't I?
Bryn, quick question. Would you recommend going to any of the SSAS networking groups to meet other SSAS people and get educated?
In truth, I've never been to one. I'm going next week to my very first SSAS networking event. I can report back on whether I know it. I'm sure it'd be great. It's like a property networking event. Everybody's got a common topic. Everybody's got SSAS.
You're going to the Leeds one?
I am going to the Leeds one.
I'll see you there.
I mean, in which case, brilliant. My worry is always like you can't buy residential. When a little rumour starts, they tend to spread much faster than the truth. And the other problem I have with groups of SSAS people is they all talk about my SSAS, our SSAS. They've all got one SSAS and they're vastly experienced in one SSAS. Well, I've got 20 years of running over 1,000. So I talk on a kind of different concept because I don't really care what happened with your one SSAS because you'll be explaining it wrong. And your building hasn't paid VAT because buildings aren't taxpayers. So can you stop posting things like my building paid this in VAT because it didn't? I understand people can explain things wrong, but it's just go. Of course anything like this is valuable, but you've got to pick who you listen to. You've got to pick who you listen to. People share stories about the clever stuff they've done. Absolutely bang on. Tell you problems or issues or you can't do. Don't just ignore it, because the answer with SSAS is what can you do? We can do absolutely anything you want. Absolutely anything you want that's legal. The only decision that I'll be telling you is whether it's inside or outside the SSAS. It's that simple. The minute you can borrow 90% of your money back, not a problem. That's not from you, which I explained how you did that earlier through a life insurance company. But the minute you can buy absolutely any kind of property you want through an exempt property unit trust, which is a product that's been in existence for 30 years, the answer is yes to anything you want to do that's legal. Can you do crypto? Yes. Well, I want to trade crypto. Well, if you want to trade crypto, you can't trade it through a SSAS, so why don't you lend the money back to your limited company and trade as much crypto as you damn well want to? The answer is always going to be yes. It's just inside or outside your SSAS. And that's probably the one thing I'd want to leave to everybody that's listening. The answer is always going to be yes. It's that amazing a vehicle. The answer is always going to be yes. It'll just be inside or outside. Thank you so much all for listening. Thank you. Claire, help.
Claire messaged and said she was having computer issues. So
She looks like she's frozen.
Who's the other admin on here? Because I need to introduce Valeria, who's been very, very patiently waiting, I think.
It's me.
Can you hear me? Anyone hear me? Hello?
Can hear you a little bit,
Yeah, I
Claire.
can hear you.
Hear you.
No, it's broken. Just spinning.
Christy then. Christy,
Yeah, I'm happy
rescue
to
me.
introduce Valeria. We're really looking forward to your presentation. I'll hand it straight over to you. Are there some slides, Valeria?
There are, yes. Hi, everybody. Hi, Brian. Great. I caught the end of your presentation, but it seems so interesting.
Exhausted bit. Good luck. Good luck. Good luck.
Valeria,
I was the warm-up act.
Valeria, I'm going to make you host so you can share your own because I haven't got your slides.
I think I'm already a host.
Brilliant.
So
Fabulous.
I can do that probably by myself.
Great.
So I'm actually going to start now. So first of all, thank you very much for being here. Thanks, Brian. You've been amazing. And I know you must be really tired, but now you can rest and listen to some fluffy stuff, as some people seem to think of it. But you can relax now. I just have this one. So let's see if I can share my screen with you guys. If I could share a portion would be amazing, but it won't let me. Music and sound only. Let's just share it that way. Oh, It won't let me share it.
Saying here you're sharing your sound.
Well, you could hear, I know you can hear me, but I won't share my screen. There we go. Can you see my screen?
It's
Yep.
blank, but we can see it.
And this is not what we need to share. I don't know why it won't let me.
Have you tapped on the one that you want to share?
Okay, can you
Joe?
see now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. So I'm going to share. I'm going to make a slideshow. So you can actually, I'm going to make a different slideshow. That one. I don't know whether this is going to work though on my computer. No, it's not. So I'm going to make a different share. Can you see my screen still?
No.
No. Great. Okay, let's try again. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, it won't let me do a presenter view. So I'll have to share it this way. I hope you don't mind. So first of all, I'd like to introduce myself to those. I know there is some faces, familiar faces already, and I've seen some of you guys there. But for those who don't know me, I am Valeria. And a few things very, very, very briefly about me. I've always had a passion for property since teenage and for property refurbishment till since teenage. Actually, before that, because my dad, although my dad wasn't a builder or a property investor, he was a doer-upper. So my dad used to buy properties that were a bit poop, and he would do them up and put the family in there. And since I was a little kid, and I have the most, probably the youngest I was, I'm about 7, and I am building a snowman. Mind you, I'm from Sicily. In Sicily, very rarely snows, and that's probably why there is that picture. I'm building a snowman with my brother. I'm about 7, and behind me, there is